Well, welcome to the Utah Higher Education and Corrections Council.
Let me give you the real agenda because that's the minutes from
Okay.
the last meeting.
I am Representative Melissa Ballard, and my co-chair is Senator Mike McKell, who apparently will be in New York on Saturday. So we're excited for you. Yes.
Singing Hamilton for Eric.
So I just want to say it's great for me every time I walk in just to see these familiar faces that we've been working so diligently with over the last 3 or 4 years as we've been doing this, and to see so much progress. So just wanted to mention that, and looking forward to our discussion today, presentations. So Co-Chair McKell, was that a motion to approve the
It was minutes of September 17th.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I didn't ask for debate, but I don't think we needed it. So thank you for that approval. We have a great agenda today. We will start with Helen Hansen from the Department of Workforce Services. And she also, so we're going to turn it over to you, Helen.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of take a few minutes to kind of talk about what we're doing to support those with criminal backgrounds with the department. I did give out or include, excuse me, a handout with some information regarding the different divisions within the department and what some of the services that we have to offer. There's a lot of resources that are available, as well as for citizens, as well as for employers looking to hire those. So of course, we have the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, and they offer services to individuals with disabilities. So if you have somebody or know somebody that's exiting or has a criminal background, of course, and has some sort of a disability that's impacting their ability to obtain employment, we do the referrals to the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation. They also have assistive technologies. This could be anything from assistive readers to services for the blind and disabled and hearing impaired. They also offer services for job placements, training services as well, and then counseling and guidance. I am part of what's called the Workforce Development Division. And so a lot of our services are very similar to what Utah State Office of Rehabilitation offers as well. We work very closely together to coordinate, because sometimes what USOR might be able to offer, we may not be able to, and vice versa. So we coordinate quite a bit with our services. We do a lot of worksite learning opportunities depending on the funding stream that's available and that our customers are eligible for. There's also career counseling available, and this is where we would have somebody come in, do some work readiness evaluations in each local employment center, which are located throughout the state. And just also keep in mind that USOR also has locations throughout the state. We help with job search, resumes. There's also a division for apprenticeships opportunities. And I know Scott Romney is working with some in the prison system and kind of working on some coordination efforts to assist those that are exiting. We have job board designation, which is the HB 181. And that's where employers can go in and indicate on their job postings if they are friendly to those with criminal backgrounds, and if it's a good fit or an opportunity for somebody. So they can go into our system and indicate that on their job posting that they have, that this would be a good position for somebody with a criminal background. We also have federal bonding programs that people aren't familiar with. So this is for somebody that may not be able to be commercially bonded. We have that program and service offered through the Department of Workforce Services. And then we also have the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And this is a tax credit incentive offered to employers for certain targeted groups.
What's up? Nate, did you have a question or just need to mute your microphone? All right, go ahead.
And so this is just a program for work incentives for employers that gives them tax credits for, and one of those identified special groups are those with criminal backgrounds as well. And then, of course, we have our eligibility services division, and they have SNAP benefits, which is it's the food stamp program that you guys are aware of, I think. In addition to that, we have medical assistance, the targeted adult Medicaid program, which is the eligibility is determined by our eligibility services division. And then they have the HRSS, which is the housing related services and supports. And this is the homeless program that's administered through the Health and Human Services. And this is the program that has the homeless support services, I guess you could say, and they are, there is a targeted group that they look at. Those are those that are chronically homeless, those with mental health, and then in addition to that, those with criminal backgrounds. And so those are kind of what some of the eligibility criteria that they look at when determining eligibility for that targeted adult Medicaid. So there's quite a few services that we have that we can offer. What happens in each designated service area just depends on the resources and staffing that's available. I know we also have somebody that goes to the prison on release days and kind of facilitates and gives some information regarding our programs that we offer. He kind of helps with like some resume resources and kind of directs them to different local employment centers. I know in northern Utah, in the Ogden area, we have the NUCC. We have a lot of those that have been released. It's like a halfway house. And they come into our service centers requesting assistance with job search. We can sometimes connect them with employers that are felon friendly or might have positions open within their companies that are more friendly to those with criminal backgrounds. We talk a lot about bonding. And then we also talk with a lot of employers. We have workforce development specialists that talk to a lot of employers about the tax incentive programs as well. So there's quite a few resources and services that we have available. It's just trying to get the information out. And so we are doing a lot more research in some of the local county jails and halfway houses, trying to get that information to them. And again, it really depends on the service area and the resources and staffing that are available and the population as well, and where we're going to be able to target the most number of people that could benefit from our services. Any questions? There's a lot, I know.
Yeah, no, is that the end of your presentation?
Yes.
What you have?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's great to open up something that I think is the purpose of this committee, which is you offer so many vital resources for our community.
Yes.
So the question for this committee is how can we help you? And I see Eric Hutchins online. And others, how can we, what is missing in corrections that we can collaborate with? I know that the last couple of years, there's been two of my colleagues that have sponsored legislation regarding you and corrections. One of them being that there needs to be a database that shows which jobs are available for those with a felony record.
Right.
And the second one is for corrections to help our inmates 60 days before they leave to search and for these jobs. So why don't I'm going to let you and Eric have a conversation. The rest of us are just going to sit here and listen for a minute.
Sure. Well, right now we are meeting with Dan Chestnut, who and the service area directors. So those are assistant directors from south end of the state all the way to the northern end of the state. And so we kind of coordinate with Dan, kind of give him an update on what we're doing in each area locally. Again, it's kind of hard to duplicate what we're doing in one area as to the other because of resources and staffing that are available. And to, the population and of people, of course, in Salt Lake, you're gonna have more that are exiting and there's gonna be a higher population of those with criminal backgrounds in the area because they're coming from the prison locally. We do have more up in the Ogden area as well because of the halfway house. One of the things that we're trying to do is getting into the prisons and giving access to some of our website. There is that, and this is something we've talked to Dan about as well. And Eric, you're probably familiar with getting access to some of our workshops and that kind of thing, because we have them available online and they'd have to just register with DWS in order to be able to access it. But I think some of the access with the internet and that kind of thing makes it a little bit difficult for them to be able to utilize those workshops that are there. So we're trying to work around that by doing some workshops locally in person But that is one of the things that we're running into is the email thing that we kind of talked about at our last meeting, is for them having an email for them to be able to register. And then again, that internet access tends to be a little bit of a barrier as well, being able to get registered in addition to accessing some of these workshops that we have that are recorded online and available. Because I think that would be a good resource for them to be able to view, preparing for an interview, how to address those questions that come up when they're in an interview with an employer that says, well, tell me about your criminal background. What happened there? You marked this on your application, and how they're able to best address that.
So Erica, how does what she mentioned apply? We are defining the reentry division duties. What are you currently doing? How can we help you with what Helen just presented? What's your perspective?
So first of all, big shout out to Helen and her team. Workforce Services has been great. I think the really big change that you're all going to see in this space is two parts. The new reentry and rehabilitation division is designed to specifically focus on these types of things. We've never had that before. And so I believe you're going to start seeing some pretty dramatic changes, enhancements, growth in the number of people that are prepared for employment, that are working on employment before they get out. And so a couple of quick updates for you, Representative, that are, it's taken us a little while, but it's very good progress. So number one is that we are working to make sure that as people move out, especially through the community correctional centers, our new director of our technology division has been working on putting systems together, computer systems, the actual hardware and the programs that are on them, so that we can put them inside of our community correctional centers. We're looking to expand that to every one of those that are in the state, and then maybe even to some other facilities. So we've had to be extremely cautious of that. And one of our challenges, and it goes back to, we do everything online, but some offenders, especially sex offenders, are strictly prohibited from being online. Obviously, if you're enticing a minor online, last thing we want to do is encourage them to get a computer, get internet access. And so we have some really complicated cases. But the thing I can encourage you with is that we have started putting computer systems in those facilities, figuring out how to lock them down so that they can have access to only whitelisted, pre-approved websites, and that they can't hopefully circumvent their way around it. We have trackers and can tell who's on and things like that. So we are just about there for being able to provide the tech. And I think that's going to be a significant advantage. We're already working on that. We have a lab set up inside of both of our prisons where they can start to do that. Representative Clancy, you guys should probably know, has been talking through his reentry coalition that he's been working with Doppel. And we just met very recently, hadn't gone into a ton of detail, but one of the advantages you have in Representative talking about what jobs are available, there's actually another element to that that's kind of nice. And Doppel has created a program where we can take somebody's criminal history, send it over to Doppel, and they will actually send back a list of all of the different types of licenses for different vocations that that individual can qualify for. So the nice thing is we can put that into their education plan. We can do that early on their way into the facility. And so part of the reentry and rehabilitation division is not only it's to shift the reentry effort. And you've heard Director Red talk about this literally all the way up to day one. What education do you have? What prior work experience do you have? What licenses have you held in the past? Can you keep those licenses? Do we need to retrain you for something else? Send off that information to Doppel, find out which ones they can qualify for. Because I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we did a survey of different types of vocations that inmates would like to have on, when they reenter. Number one number one, and this goes to Senator McKell's thing, number one most popular interest for a vocation is as an actor. And I don't know how many of them sing very well and could do Broadway, or I think a few too many of them may have seen Vin Diesel and Ice-T make a lot of money as an actor, but I don't know that that's the greatest place to encourage them to go. So starting early, really getting them an honest idea of what types of vocations they could qualify for and legally work in, I think is going to really help open that up. So the last thing I wanted to reiterate, Representative, going specifically to this, is part of that reentry and rehabilitation division is we have what are called resource navigators and we have case managers. Case managers are assigned to help people do their evaluations. Where are you now? Where do you need to be by the time you get out of here? Or even as you exit, what additional classes do you need? What types of supports for being able to get an employable job and things like that. The resource navigator is a little bit different. They're very much about, what is it, Maslow's hierarchy, right? Where it's housing, it's food, it's the ability to focus on learning and improving themselves because they haven't gone 3 days without a meal. And so we've combined those two together inside of reentry and rehabilitation, specifically so that we can help them focus on and develop a good employability skill set. So I know that was a lot, but after the couple of months ago, some of the things that we talked about in this meeting, we went back and just kind of dropped the hammer and really started pushing hard. And I think that the online access in our community correctional centers, online access inside of the prison, the connections with Doppel, and the addition of these resource managers and case managers, or excuse me, resource navigators and case managers. Those are some of the new things to report back to you that are up and operational, and I think will be a real asset to this team as we come up with new things that we want to work on. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. I think that was the whole point, because we have had in the past this conversation with no pathway. And so I think what both of you just presented, especially with the work that corrections has made, the changes, I think have opened this up tremendously. And so I think our role here is to understand what pathways have barriers, how we can make this better. Because ultimately, the question that from what you just had is that, Eric, you alluded to in working with Doppel, is how does that translate to the education, right? So I know we've got a lot on our agenda, but I do want to ask, since we have great representatives here from the educational systems, how do you feel like what Doppel and workforce services were able to do, and now you've got these resource navigators and case managers and academic access advisors, right? Academic advisors. How, what do you feel like the barriers are for you in the classes that you're teaching or mentoring? What do you have any barriers that you want to identify for us as this council to help address or to know about?
I would say that the Doppel portion is just reinforcing to the student that there are going to be opportunities, which I think is beneficial to them, that they do know they're not taking Dave's or mine or Andy's word for it, that there are these opportunities when they leave. So I think that's hugely beneficial. In addition to that, we've just completed actually a 20-seat computer lab on the women's side, which with the intent of having access to the DWS website. So it's in the process of being improved. Yeah, so things are good.
And I think having the resource navigators and case managers coordinating with our specialists in the office will be a huge impact on those that are exiting. So, and we're just kind of trying to get connected with them because we do have a good rapport with our local agencies and connecting with them, whether it's APNP or, you know, just trying to get connected with the local jails and stuff too. So
So how does that affect your ability to shift or adjust depending on how many are wanting more of one program or another? Do you see any barriers or challenges that we could bring up and address here?
I think that the most important thing moving forward that we can do as a group is to use the word, to co-opt it, coordinate our efforts. It seems as if we have some exciting resources that are being put together by UDC. I'm so excited with our collaboration with the University of Utah, and we're going to get to talk about some of the things, the exciting things that are happening there. But it seems at this point that there's just a lot going on in different areas without that coordinating effort that needs to take place. For example, last Friday, we were myself and Dr. Bradbury were invited to participate in a meeting with Ensign College, who is working now to enter into the prison to offer an educational program, and which is very exciting, of course, and yet. Boy, what a challenge this is presenting for us in our various institutions with limited resources available. So much of what UDC is doing now is pushing to set things up for Ensign College so that they can run their first non-accredited class this next semester that is going to kind of experiment and see what they can do to prepare students to go into college. The week before, I had a meeting while in Florida with folks from Utah Valley University who are interested in coming in and setting up a bachelor's program as well. So there's a lot of interest that is going on and a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes, even with UDC. And it seems to me that what we're lacking is just communication and coordinating our efforts, because I feel that we have all of the pieces in place to truly transform the educational efforts in the correctional environment. We have the institutions, we have so much in place. Right now, we can make some major changes, but this is going to require that we, instead of having independent entities over in this corner, and then this happening over here with workforce, that we are able to then coordinate our efforts so that we're building upon and collaborating with one another on the work that we're doing. That collaboration is going to be essential because all the pieces are here now. And I think that as UDC then hires a director of education here in the next couple of weeks, that hopefully we'll start to see that collaboration and coordination happening more effectively. To me, right now, I think that's the biggest barrier. We need to have that connection as a group that we're all working together harmoniously and towards the common good of improving education in this environment.
So my recommendation, since we have a number of you here, right, is in preparation for that academic director, that you can have some side conversations with workforce, with Eric, with you, and actually be able to give that new director recommendations of who and how you want to get together, what you want to collaborate on. If it needs to be here, we can figure that out. But I think your side groups, your subgroups are really important to get that accomplished. But I think it's going to be much more effective for you to hand that new director the opportunity of a new director and how you want to and would recommend working that forward, just because if you wait for them to get their feet on the ground, we want to be, I think, proactive in being able to have this part of what they're doing. How does that sound to you, Eric?
Yeah, I really like the comment about the fact that we've got a lot of resources and a lot of tools. We really do. And a big shout out to each of you, because I think for a long time, nobody really wanted to deal with this population, but there is such good evidence out there now that really good education connected with good employment changes the game. And Representative Senator McKell, there's just good, just national level data now that if you have a well-educated and a fully full-time employed individual coming out of the system, their odds of going back just plummets. It's the single most effective thing that any state in the nation has done. And so to that comment about being coordinated and helping a new director get off to a very quick start. Yeah, yes, and thank you. And again, quite frankly, there's not a whole lot else we could do that's going to have a bigger impact than exactly this conversation. So thank you, Representative.
Question.
Okay. We do also have, let's see, Tim, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, just wanted a little bit of curiosity maybe in there, because I'm loving this discussion. And heaven knows you have to start somewhere, and I'm absolutely okay with that, because this discussion is just so important. But I'm wondering, in terms of how you initially address this, are there barriers out there? I'm wondering if location is one of those barriers. I'm hearing these tools being mentioned, but I'm not aware of any of this being put in, say, the Duchesne County Jail. And so I'm wondering if location is a barrier.
Unfortunately, our sheriff just had to hop off, which would have been a good perspective. But, you know, Eric, you have what, 1,000 inmates that are sent out to various contracted jails?
Almost
so
1,600, yeah.
100. And so I think that can be in the recommendation of how to make some online offerings and continuation of education, regardless of location, of what can be offered virtually, what can be offered in real time versus downloading onto a computer and so forth. I think that needs to be part of it. And I think this is definitely what we've been talking about for a few years. But now we have more access, and we'll have a new director to start fresh to say, okay, then what pieces do we put? I think my request is, how do you maintain the flexibility and the real-time data to know where you need to shift? So, you know, that the metrics constantly of what classes are you offering? What is it that the inmates are wanting, and what the time frame is, and the access, and what, if we can create kind of a metric for that, at least some of the data will drive where the next semester might want to make some shifts.
I recommendation, I shared with the Ensign College folks. There is such a void in terms of educational offerings in the county jails. There is a huge need, and to be able to go in and facilitate pathways, Ensign College online resources into those county jails where we cannot get to as institutions and teach face-to-face is where there is a great need. I do have concerns with bringing in online programs into the prison when we already are offering face-to-face education, which all of the studies nationally show are so much more transformative for the incarcerated population rather than distance education sitting in front of a computer. So since there is this huge need out in the county jails, and there are these colleges that want to provide that, I would love to see UDC encourage them to fill that need and reserve the prison experience where we have a much more, a less transient population, face-to-face opportunities for education. I would like to see that happen.
Well, I think that could be a good recommendation. Eric, you have a comment, and then we'll go to Christy.
Yeah, just quickly, and I'm really happy that this got brought up. A couple of things. One, the ability to do programming out in the jails is a pretty hot topic for both of our budget chairs. So for the two of you, just wanted to let you know that Senator Owens and Representative Burton are both keenly interested in this subject, and I believe could be allies for whatever you might need on this topic. So just wanted to let you know that they actually have brought this up to us. So number one. Number two, the people that go out to the county jails, just for context, and I know most of you know this, but they're typically the better behaved, less complex, probably voted more likely to succeed by their fellow students. Those are the ones that go to the county jails. And so being able to offer programming to the population that is most likely to go back out into the community and have a chance to be successful. And, it's not everybody, obviously, but it is definitely the population that is best positioned to benefit tremendously from this. And so I just really appreciate that you guys have eyes on with us, because I think there's a real opportunity there that we just haven't capitalized on over the years. Thank you, Representative.
Christy and then Jay.
So I just came back from a site visit to Sanpete County Jail just about an hour ago for a technology visit. We are offering IBC or video conference courses in 3 of the local jails in Juab, in Sanpete, and Sevier right now. And we found some logistical issues, not just with, we'd love to offer face-to-face classes in there, but we're stuck right now over video conferencing because they don't have classrooms also. Not only are they missing technology, but the classroom spaces we're able to teach in are so incredibly small that they're essentially just spaces not much larger than an office. And so that's something else to consider as well, is that we would love to offer more education in the county facilities, but that's one of the challenges we're facing is as these facilities have more and more students who want to be involved in the programs, we have 1 classroom in each facility that's accessible for us, and we can only house about 10 students in each classroom. And so any problem solving we can do with that as well. I know that's a really complicated issue that involves a lot of different funds and not just state funds, but that's also been a real challenge for us as well. So I agree with David. I think face-to-face education is the most effective form of education, but I also think we do need to be flexible and offer what we can, where we can in the different modalities, just to make sure we're offering as much as we can.
Thank you. Jay?
Thank you. Christy was gonna go. So,
Can you just be closer to your computer? We're having a hard time hearing you.
sorry. Is that a little bit better? I'll
That's
speak
right,
here. Well, thank you. So, thank you, Representative, and I wasn't quite sure where Christy was gonna go with her comment. But looking at some of the challenges on the technical education side, and I'm going to speak on the technical side because of the skills that we can offer into the Department of Corrections facilities, whether it's at Gunnison or Salt Lake, or even at these county facilities, is really just space. I know we're prepared to do a couple of different kinds of things in Gunnison, but boy, we have limited space where we may not even be able to find a 12 by 12 foot closet, put something in that could provide some skills for inmates. So I love the coordination that's been talked about with DWS, and I think that's a great partnership to involve them. And with the comments that Helen made, I'm wondering about what opportunity they would have, right in Central Utah at our Gunnison facility, but to provide those opportunities for inmates to get the technical skills that really maybe most of them would be very adept to when they get out. Space is really one of the limiting factors. And so it's the same point Christy made, that in county facilities, limited space, even in the Gunnison prison that's been around for 30+ years, limited space. And so that involves a very complex conversation that involves lots of different folks and groups coming together to find space. So thank you.
Thank you. I am looking at our Zoom meeting and Taylor has a beautiful picture, but I'm going to turn to her next to me, our Associate Commissioner of Higher Education, and request that since we are not meeting in person until after the legislative session, that you could work with all of these different educational institutions and create a sheet that really shows who's offering what online, what are options in person, and the locations where they currently reside. And I know one thing that USHE is doing more in the public sector is it used to be so location designation for CE classes. of you had to work with the institution that was closest to you, and now you're broadening that to any of the institutions can offer the CE classes regardless of location. I think that principle can apply here, that some may want to be and are working with the jails close by. But if there are other offerings that could be given by other institutions, we just want to know what's the menu, what's the offering, what's the balance, and different jails might be able to pick their own menu that might work for their space, for the numbers, and the time frame that they have. And so if you could do that from you, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ballard. We can certainly do that. And I'm almost just picturing like a matrix, almost of all of the listed facilities and then the institutions, and including some not represented here. Richard and I have had the opportunity to visit with other institutions that are offering things that maybe not coordinated through this group as well. So I think we'll be able to easily list out on the matrix what's offered where, how it's offered. And then I would also like to add, if it's okay with you, maybe some limitations that aren't addressed. So if we have 10, knowing that we have 10 because it's a cap of a room space or something like that, I think that we can do a good job of understanding kind of the full scope of that as well.
I think that'd be great, and I think that's the way forward. We got a little off to the side from the presentation of DWS, but I think this is really the core of what this group does, what we have been doing, and I think we need to really make that the core for our meetings in 2025, is looking at that matrix. How are we doing? Where are the barriers? What's working? What's not? What do we need to shift? How are we shifting? And that flexibility of the student needs. So I think needs to be, in my mind, a priority for 2025 and what we address. So thank you for all of your input. All right, so let's move on to, we have a presentation from Andy Eisen from the University of Utah and what you are proposing.
Wonderful, and I think it really dovetails nicely in this conversation, so I didn't jump in before because we have some ideas that may help further along some of the goals that have been expressed here. So if Richard or Taylor might be.
Yeah, it's definitely me, but my computer is giving me some really strong warnings here with the exclamation points about sharing. So I'm gonna message I'm gonna drop your presentation into the chat for the virtual attendees. And if someone out there wants to share, that would be extremely helpful until I can get our IT person down to understand why it's giving me such horrible errors. But if you wanna start, I'll send it out on the chat. And if someone could share from their screen, that would just be wonderful.
Great, happy to do that. So what we are proposing is creating a first of its kind in the nation, one-stop shop student center at the Utah State Correctional Facility. So just a little bit about our program and what we do. Our mission is to advance educational justice through on-site higher education, empirical research, and advocacy. I then have just a beautiful slide of our team that includes faculty at the University of Utah, staff, graduate students, as well as an alum of our program who's currently finishing her undergraduate degree at the U and working for us as our reentry coordinator. So let me start before we jump into what the idea for the one-stop shop is and how it would work. Just a little bit about our program and some key achievements in the last year. So for the first time in the history of the University of Utah, we had 15 incarcerated students apply to the university and were accepted. And we began our bachelor's degree program in the summer of 2024. In addition, we were recognized by the Department of Corrections as a prison education project. Thank you so much. Richard, if you could slide to, I think it's slide number 4 we're on. There's a photograph of our very first class towards the degree program this summer. We have 15 students who were accepted, as I mentioned. In addition to the degree program, it's the Bachelor's in University Studies, a broad-based humanities degree. We were recognized by the Utah State Correctional Facility as a prison education program as we're kind of working towards being able to access Pell funding in the future. We have a partnership with BYU where we are offering credit-bearing classes in the bearer units. That's an ongoing partnership that we've had for a number of years. We've made some real great progress with our friends and partners at Salt Lake Community College on a 2+2 program for future cohorts. just trying to streamline, collaborate, cooperate, as Dave said, which is, I think, key for all of our programs as we're working in limited space. Everyone has big ideas, big hearts, and wants to do great work. And how can we figure out what each institution, what role each institution can fill best? And how can we partner together to kind of achieve that post-secondary attainment culture that I think we're all after. In addition to programming on site, we are launching a Center for Research and Education Justice and Opportunity at the U, led by Dr. Erin Castro. In 2023, we were awarded funding just under $1 million to launch this national research project on higher education in prison. We have since been, Erin, don't want to take credit for her work, that's not mine. Erin has been invited to apply for a $10 million grant to fund that research center moving forward. So that's all on the research side. What's really exciting about this, I think, is that Utah is going to become the place in the nation where people think about higher education in prison, both research and practice. And we see through this work that we're doing as a council, how much further ahead we are than many states in the nation. And finally, kind of for today, what I want to talk about is this idea that we have for developing a one-stop shop student center. We can go to the next slide. So this came about in January of this last year. Brian Fodder, the previous education director, held a meeting at the in the Bear section asking for programs to do literacy outreach support. And I think Dan was at that meeting. We had a number of community partners. And we had worked with we had worked with Brian over the past few months to figure out how we could support that effort of increasing literacy on the compound. What that has turned into is this idea for a one-stop shop where the University of Utah would kind of be working on either side of that kind of, on either side of the programming needs, from supporting folks who are in the very basic needs area for literacy, math, et cetera, to help them get into Davis Tech and be successful in Davis Tech so that they can be successful in Salt Lake Community College. And then kind of for a limited number, the bachelor's degree program. Our program is never going to be able to enroll hundreds of students in a bachelor's degree program at the prison, not feasible funding wise. With the student population, it would be challenging, but I think that our program is really well situated to support that post-secondary education work that's happening with our partners at Salt Lake Community College and Davis Tech. So we are proposing to launch an integrated cross-functional service peer tutoring and advising project designed to offer comprehensive academic support for all incarcerated students in Dell pursuing post-secondary education. We've made a lot of progress in this work. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Next slide.
And I will go over a few reasons why we think a one-stop shop is beneficial to the student population at the prison. First, it becomes a place where folks know that they can go if they have questions about tutoring, if they want to learn about what sorts of post-secondary opportunities exist on the compound. We can partner with our friends at Salt Lake Community College, Davis Tech, to provide our education advocates who are seven incarcerated students who are enrolled in UPEP, who were selected to help run this work inside. We've signed a contract, we're finalizing the contract with the Department of Corrections, where we're able to compensate those seven education advocates who would be leading out that work on site. And they would become representatives in Dell to support post-secondary work. It's a place where there's an immediacy for students in answering questions, accessing people and resources, essentially a place where people can go who are looking to have answers about what opportunities may exist on the compound. So many times in passing, as we're walking through the compound, someone stops us and just have really basic questions. And so we're training people to be able to answer those questions. it also, kind of the tutoring side, which I'll get to a little bit more in just a moment. These one-stop shops have shown to increase student satisfaction, retention, and completion, all things that I know all of our programs are invested in. So we are training incarcerated folks to be the tutors on site, and they can help us consolidate some of the various needs and challenges we face and consolidate kind of a response to those challenges. And then finally, kind of to this point, it allows us to collaborate. We've talked a lot about how collaboration, like in these meetings, that we need to collaborate. Having one place where students can go, where we can collaborate with Salt Lake Community College, ask them, what are the most challenging classes that your students have, where maybe the students are either dropping out, or they're not receiving those high grades, or they're not receiving all the skills they need to be successful in the next class. And we can train our education advocates to then focus on those classes. We can share out the textbooks ahead of time, the syllabi. We can have study groups around exams, whereby we are kind of working in close collaboration to figure out ways to enhance the post-secondary education experience on the compound. We can go to the next slide. We have a number of key partners already in the one-stop shop. The Utah Museum of Fine Arts, the Utah Humanities, the College of Humanities, as well as the University of Utah Reading Clinic, who are doing the training right now with our 7 advocates, and then also the Sunshine Lady Foundation. So we've been able to secure private funding that's going to allow us to hire the advocates beginning in January and make it the most desirable job on the compound. And I think that is going to go a long way in making this successful. We've selected, if you go to the next slide, we've selected students who are alumni of Davis Tech and alumni of Salt Lake Community College, who have gone through those problems, who have gone through those programs, are aware of the classes, know the student body. We made the requirements to be an advocate, they had to have an associate degree, and of course, I mean, 6 of the 7 completed their associate's degrees through Salt Lake Community College. There was a written application, an interview with UPEP staff, and now we're in the process of doing this 6-month training, and with the promise of offering ongoing professional development. We can go to the next slide. We are offering now this training program in pedagogy, writing center theory. The Utah Reading Clinic is offering, kind of to that original point that Brian wanted us to improve literacy on the compound. We then contracted with through a grant with the Utah Reading Clinic to offer training to our education advocates. Since that time, we have we've worked closely to get those resources that already exist at the U. And the idea is to figure out how to get all of these resources that exist and just kind of shift them to the prison setting. So we have the Reading Clinic, the Learning Center in the Office of Undergraduate Studies, where our program is housed, as well as U Career Success, which have offered resources and training, as well as professional development workshops from a number of faculty members who want to volunteer their time to come out and support this effort. So we have faculty members from the School of Social and Cultural Transformation, the College of Education, College of Humanities, and College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, who want to come out and support and ensure that our education advocates have the resources they need to do the most good that they can on the compound. If we can go to the next slide. So one more slide, I'm sorry. Or did I just skip something? It's pretty crazy. I did, sorry. If we can go back one.
Hey, just quickly, I'm not sure why we can hear several voices on the virtual part of the meeting. There's like 3 or 4 voices that are coming across.
Okay, we'll keep that to a minimum. I don't think we can, I don't know how to mute those big things up there,
I'm going to
so
whisper
we'll.
more quietly.
Okay.
I was singing, Eric, for you.
Yeah, Hamilton, didn't
brought
you
it up.
remember?
I'm grateful. I'm very grateful then.
We're,
That you
we're
missed
having
it.
great side conversations with what he's presenting, actually. We're taking a few notes to follow up with, so.
Yep.
All right, Andy, keep
Okay.
going.
Wonderful. So we've been coordinating with Davis Tech to find a space to hold hold the one-stop shop student center in the afternoons in Dell, where we can begin our tutoring sessions. We also had a great conversation with UDC officers to determine space that where advocates could work in their study halls and tutoring sessions, so where they can hold study halls and tutoring sessions during the weekends. We've been in conversations also with Salt Lake Community College about determining which classes we can pilot to be supportive of to begin with. And then finally, the center can also be a place where we offer high impact enrichment programming. Now we can go to that next slide. So for example, we've been in conversation with Utah Humanities to offer a credit-bearing venture course. And that would be specifically for folks on the compound who have never taken post-secondary education before, where our education advocates could then work as teaching assistants and offer additional support for those classes and help kind of create a pathway towards Davis Tech and Salt Lake Community College, kind of if the University of Utah can be that funnel to help kind of on that front end, getting folks into Salt Lake Community College and Davis Tech, and then doing some of that on-site support through tutoring, and then eventually limited bachelor's degree offerings as well through the University of Utah. So we have this partnership that we're developing with Utah Humanities. The Utah Museum of Fine Arts wants to do a traveling exhibit in Dell next semester that would be run through the center. And then also Sundance Film Festival, we held screenings last year from Sundance. This could also be held through the center, just trying to get excitement for post-secondary ed, get people thinking about the opportunities that exist on compound, and then know that there is a supportive environment for them. Next slide. Long term, we have been thinking about how this one-stop shop and how a one-stop shop translates into a prison. And eventually we're thinking that these advocates can be trained to do re-entry and workforce readiness. And so was loving the conversation that we're having about all of the resources that are being created. And it seems to me that one of the challenges that exists about these resources is simply making folks aware of their existence. And so if we have one place where folks know that they can go to access tutoring support, to access re-entry support, to receive re-entry guides. So in my previous institution, this is the Life After Incarceration, we created a re-entry workbook modeled after I'm not gonna pass these around, modeled after Mapping Your Future from the University of Illinois, where I attended graduate school and was involved in this program. And we are a few months away from launching our Utah-based reentry guide that will look like this. And so if we can get these workbooks into the hands of folks inside, so if we can partner with workforce development as well as the other services that exist on the compound to have that kind of peer support, thinking about reentry. Sometimes it's as much about the messenger. And so if we have folks who are trusted on the compound, who are involved as education advocates, who can be trained to then support this workforce and readiness and reentry, we think that would go a long way. And some of these services already exist, such as resume writing that I've heard. And so just maybe sharing resources and figuring out how to get those resources and to train the trainers, right? In providing cover letters, resumes, interview strategies, et cetera, and doing that through peer support. And then the final slide, and I'm glad to ask questions, just what would it take to make this program a reality beyond the private funding that we have? So we've done, I think, a really good job of attracting private funding for this program. We can cover the wages for the education advocates, that's coming through private funding. And we can do that for the next couple of years. We've been able to get material support, books, computers, et cetera, through private funding to make this a sustainable project. For $150,000 a year, that would cover the cost of a director of the one-stop shop. Might allow me to sleep a little bit more, which would be nice, to have someone in charge of this beyond the work that we're doing. To have a graduate student through the U who could be on site offering continual programming, training, as well as tutoring alongside the education advocates. We could offer evaluation through the Center for Research on Education Justice and Opportunity to be able to determine whether or not this is an effective model. As I mentioned, this does not exist anywhere else in the country. And so I think we need to be able to determine whether it's effective and how, so we could offer that evaluation. And it would allow us to build out that workforce development and reentry guidance, as well as help support us in printing and getting these into the hands of folks inside.
Andy, that was awesome. I have just a couple of things. One of them is, because this is new in the country, have you looked at federal grants that might be an opportunity to help fund this?
Yeah, so we're always looking for grant funding.
Yeah.
We haven't identified a federal grant quite yet that would kind of allow us to launch this in kind of the full way that we've done here. But if you're aware of them, of particular grants we should be applying to, I'm glad to know.
I'm not an expert in that field, but I think that's definitely worth exploring for federal funds before coming to the legislature, just to say, we have found part of this, this is what's left, or whatever it is, right? We fund, the legislature always loves that. But I think for 150, that's relatively minimal. And Eric, it sounds like this fits right in with you and prevents DWS from having to create a workforce within the correctional system that you can coordinate with a lot of these things. But it sounds like there's some flexibility in what the content may be, of how you want to do it. So I'm going to let you guys kind of work within each other. We're running short of time to figure out exactly what you want, what is effective for what UDC is preparing for reentry. But I think Senator McCall will be your contact point of where this is coming through.
And that's Taylor, is this gone through, where's it at through the USHE process?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this in a minute, but USHE institutions didn't rank or prioritize these as number one, or probably down the line, within their institutional budget request to our board. So no, except with the exception of Nate from Utah Tech, I do think that Utah Tech has their higher ed for incarcerated youth program was ranked and going to be on the ranked list for RFAs. But none of these other ones that we've talked about in this group went through to our board for prioritization. So that's where we're at with this, is deciding how we want to request them in the upcoming cycle.
I'm going to put another request for Senator McCall and Eric Hutchings.
To work on it?
I would like, and Representative Snow, as the creation of this council, really saw the vision that there would be a separate fund for corrections and USHE to actually evaluate and have funds that are available in the correctional facilities, because of course institutions are not going to prioritize this. It's not on their campus. This is a state entity. And so I think.
And they're prioritizing, and like UVU, I just looked at their prioritization list.
Yeah.
They prioritize the $17 million building. 'Cause they
Sure.
want the big pot.
Yeah.
This is one we probably had to coordinate a little bit with Jason Perry too, and see how we can move it.
But I think it goes
It's
to
super cool, I mean,
Yeah. And it goes to the bigger question of funding for the classes and programming and staff for any of the institutions that are doing education. I would love for Senator McCall and Eric to really talk about, is there a way to create a separate line item within corrections that actually has to do with USHE that could be considered with corrections, or where should this be housed? It's not going to get lost. because it will never be the number one priority that's going on. And I think if we're talking about reentry, preventing recidivism, this is number one on that. And so can the two of you have some side conversations about some options that you might be able to present?
I don't ever like to meet with Eric.
He's a good guy, I promise.
May I also suggest, Chair Ballard, I would love for, this was great. I lacked an understanding of where tech ed fits into the models. And so I would love maybe for some tech ed representation, especially if we have advocates out there who are talking about post-secondary opportunities. I would love for technical education to ensure the representation there on tech ed programs, not only associates and bachelor's degrees, but expanding what are all of the post-secondary options, which I know you said post-secondary. I just like to make sure that we have that note because our system is also unlike any other in the nation with how we deliver education, how we offer it.
So one other thing I think would be great, Andy, as you're rolling out some of this literacy program, K through 12, the Utah Board of Education has some great metrics to evaluate progress in learning. And maybe you have for literacy, and maybe you have something as well. But I think it would be really good next fall for us to have a report back from what you have done in the literacy space to see what's been effective, what hasn't been. We would love to have that report back from you. Okay, all right, that was awesome. We're gonna move on to David Bacavoy from Salt Lake Community College to talk about Student Mentors Work Group.
Thank you so much. I'm glad I get to go right after Andy's presentation because it does collaborate perfectly with that and coordinate with that. And I want to state how excited I am and grateful I am for the work that Andy, your team, Dr. Castro are doing in this area. From acquiring the funds to having the vision to being able to lead out in this effort is super exciting. I'm very grateful for that. This mentor work group is so important to discuss. Just a little bit of a brief background. So we have been really up and running, I'd say strongly, since 2017 in our prison education program with Salt Lake Community College. And since that time, we have we've grown significantly in numbers and classes and students. We have averaged somewhere between 200 to 300 active students inside the prison taking college classes, face-to-face courses for the past few years. We're averaging now 30 graduates with associate degrees. It's all been very exciting and a wonderful work to be involved with. And now that we've reached this point, we have a number of students inside the prison who have finished associate degrees, particularly in the men's section. And these students will come to me on a regular basis and say, I need to keep going. Can I get into SLIC and work on a second associate's degree? And I have to tell them no over and over again, but because of limited funding, limited space, but also we don't want to draw upon their Pell resources to fund a second associate's degree, when in reality, those students who want to progress should be given an opportunity to move forward with a bachelor's degree. But the other thing that can happen, because I want to make it really personal for just a minute. One of our graduates, a man who was raised in a white supremacist motorcycle gang, graduated with his associate's degree, 3.8 GPA. He has come to me on multiple occasions now and talked about how Frederick Douglass is his hero and how now he tries to love everyone regardless of their race. And he's no longer a separatist, meaning that the races should be separate, and that anthropology and other topics have changed his life completely. But now he doesn't have anything to do. And he said, I don't want to go back to causing problems in the prison. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anything to do. And one of the things that, in addition to bachelor's degree opportunities that we can facilitate, is Well, peer mentorship and tutoring. And I have been wanting to see this happen for years now, especially now that we have this graduate pool that we can draw from. We have permissions from UDC to put peer tutors into place. We don't have a model yet set up to fund and pay those positions, but it's something that we hope to have happen in the near future. The other thing that is happening with Salt Lake Community College and our efforts is that one of our English instructors, professor for Salt Lake Community College, is interested in establishing a writing center and has been working with UDC to be able to move forward and have a writing center inside the prison facility. So it's the perfect time to put her into contact with you, Andy, and to move forward with this one stop idea that I'm so excited to put into place and to coordinate efforts with. So I can get with you afterwards and share her name and contact and give you more information about that effort. But at this time, I think I spoke with Andy beforehand. In light of the progress that they've made, I've invited him to share what's happening with peer mentorship with the University of Utah.
Yeah, and so just really briefly, since I just had a chance to speak for a while, is the peer mentorship program would run through the one-stop shop, and that's kind of our vision that I outlined previously, and being able to compensate folks because Dave is absolutely right that when folks are graduating, that there is kind of a need, and you've now trained folks to do great things, and they've finished their degrees, they've done things right. It's great if we'd be able to also reward them with ongoing support inside. So that's all I have. So appreciate the opportunity.
Eric, did you want to comment on that? Was that a hand I saw raised?
No, just thumbs up and support.
Okay. I think that is a great example of where you have, at that point, after an associate's degree, there should be an opportunity for them to apply to actually complete a bachelor's degree, and who would be offering that, and how much of it is virtual, how much of it is downloadable, and have the institutions, whether it's the U or USU or whoever, to actually have somebody specific to help guide that student through that classwork and the pathway. So I think that would be, instead of an institution saying, here's the full bachelor's degrees that we want to offer, if you offer 2 or 3, it may not be even close to what they're interested in. I think it's better at that point for bachelor's degrees to be inmate specific. What is it that here's your certificate that you have with your associate's degree. Which bachelor degree are you actually looking for, rather than just a blanket, anybody who wants one only gets one of these 2 options. I think it would be more, get better results in being able to figure out how to have that pathway for that individual inmate wanting a bachelor's degree.
I appreciate that comment so much. One of the things that I shared with Utah Valley University in my meeting with them a couple of weeks ago, they expressed interest in having a bachelor's program that would build upon ours and that would offer a bachelor's in general studies. And I know why institutions go that direction. It's what we did initially at first. It's because then you're able to have your first year students in the same class with your 4th year students. It's a very smart idea. However, it doesn't make sense to me to have all of these different institutions come in and offer general studies degrees or other types of degrees that are just kind of repeating what everybody else is doing. It seems that instead that each institution should have its own specialty. So, for example, we know that humanities is being run through the University of Utah. And if Utah Valley University receives permission from the Department of Corrections to come in, perhaps a degree in psychology or something that is very specific that they can then specialize and have as their expertise, that they can just focus their effort on a 2-year program rather than even trying, because we already have a successful general education program established. If these institutions want to come in rather than taking up that space and just everybody competing with each other, people should be encouraged to have every institution should be encouraged to have its own specialty and offer something unique and different to the population that we serve.
And I would offer that we would need from USHE to know exactly who that inmate needs to, would be their mentor, their person to help get them in the right classes and make sure that they're getting their degree in that pathway, that there is a go-to academic advisor, making sure that there's not glitches in receiving the classes and all those kinds of things.
Coordinated effort, like
Yeah.
I mentioned, and I am so grateful that you mentioned the tech side of this. It's all higher education, and we coordinate, we can all specialize, and we have the pieces to be incredibly successful in this state. I truly believe that.
And I don't want to speak for Sheriff Jensen isn't here, but Richard and I had a great opportunity to meet with him. And I think it alludes to something that he talked about is there are institutions who go to him and to other sheriffs who are managing county jails and say, oh, we want to offer this program, but we need this funding to do it. And he's like, wait, like, and having served now in this capacity, he's like, is there some coordination that could happen rather than you just coming to me saying, we should do this? And because you have that privilege to be able to do that and to know how to ask for funding or to do different things, should that be how it is? But, and he keeps referring people back to us, you know, and I don't know how often that's happening in other places, but he did also stress that in our one-on-one meeting with him is there could be some more coordination that exists. And I don't know what we have that's written to tell institutions what they can and can't offer. That might be something that we want to explore here. And then I think depending on what we offer there, what we approve to be offered there, then that comes into play is how do then we mentor or advise those students in those specific programs from your direct institutions that are allowed to operate there or allowed to operate certain programs there or something that might be something we want to
The
explore.
power to make that decision lies entirely with the Department of Corrections. And that's the way it was set up with higher education, that they get to choose which institutions come in and even assess what types of degrees are offered.
What you just said is a point that I want to make for steps we can take to help accomplish this. Since corrections is the one able to make those decisions for space, for classwork, for whatever it is, I would make a recommendation, if Senator McCall's willing, that he coordinate with corrections and the governor's office to actually create a separate educational line item for funding in corrections that can have its own priorities listed. And whether you're funding mentors or TAs or coursework or literacy or whatever it is, that there's a separate pot for that. And if that can go through in 2025, then that means after that, we can start having those metrics of the proposals of here's where we have our statistics are showing where we have the most growth, where we have the most need, what are the new programs that we're showing to be effective, which ones do we want to adjust, and have a systematic way of every year, this group prioritizing what should be asked within corrections for the legislative body to fund. I think it's unfair to ask the individual institutions to try to fund them individually when they have other priorities. I think it's unfair for corrections to have a separate item with the things that they're competing with. This should not be a competition with other things. It should be a separate pot to prevent recidivism, to have better behavior in the prison, give them not just things to do, but have a job to look forward to and have that alignment. I think it will really make a difference moving forward. That would be what I would propose. So in the meantime, you could be thinking how and what is it that we have our priorities for mentorships and other things. Because it's going to be this program and it's going to be another program and another program. As we are doing better collaboration, we need to have this unified approach to the legislature and corrections for them to say, yeah, we agree on this funding because we have the space, we've made the space, or we've made these technical adjustments. And I think it would be a great thing for Senator McCall to oversee.
You're picking on me
Eric.
today.
I totally am, because you're the man, right?
I
You're
don't know
the
about that. I
man.
don't know about that.
Eric, what do you think?
I'm thinking
Thumbs up.
logistically, Eric, I think we'd have to stick it in a bill.
Right?
I think we can do this. We'll scheme. Eric and I'll scheme.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a strategy out there to be able to pull it off, but having a mandate to go with it might make it not only go through, but last. So yeah, we'll work on it.
Going line item, All right, I'm thinking this through.
And you could also counsel with former Representative Snow, because he had, this was initially what he saw this council would do, and he may have some ideas, but you two are really in the thick of it right now to be able to make it happen.
Yeah.
So,
Just to follow up to
Yes.
clarify, I thank you so much, is that the importance of this, it's very exciting what the U has up and running now and what we're going to build with them. The one shop stop.
It's a mouthful, sorry.
But it's so lovely. I'm so excited because one of the things we've struggled with is the fact that most of our students, in fact, I did a survey at one point, and about 96% of our students working on towards their college degrees received their high school degree or their GED through a county jail or through the Department of Corrections. So it tells you kind of the type of demographics we're working with students. And so what we haven't wanted to do as an institution is slow down the educational and degree awarding process by having them into the 900 level courses. That has placed a tremendous burden upon our faculty. And yet we have worked closely with our math department and our English department so that we can set up the classes so that the students are able to get the basic review and things that they need without having to take a semester to do a 900 level class that is not going to give them any college credit. The reason for that is that the studies have shown that that's really not an effective way to do things at a general national level. But the other issue is slowing down the degree awarding process for these students, that when they can get sent to maximum security or sent to a county jail or sent to some other place, it's been concerning to us as an institution. So we have worked to set up our classes in such a way to be able to help our students that really need those 900 level classes, truth be told. So moving forward with the tutorship and with the program that Andy has envisioned, I think it's going to meet a very significant need that we have because of the demographic that we're working with. But that raises the issue. There is just limited space inside the prison. Currently, in the women's facility, we are all in the chapel, well, except for Dan, but Andy and I are in the chapel running our programs together with LDS Institute, Jehovah's Witness classes, AA, everything, because the facility unfortunately was not built large enough to accommodate education, particularly in the women's side. And so so bringing in pathways, bringing in Ensign College, I understand that this is wonderful because it's going to fill up institute classes because there's a requirement for that. I understand it's wonderful that it's going to fill up the chapels because those students have to go to church, in the LDS church specifically. And I'm a former chaplain. I recognize the importance of religion and spirituality, particularly in that environment. And yet at the end of the day, there's just limited space, and there's limited support from corrections, not their fault, but they do not have the officers in place to be able to facilitate all of these independent programs and set all of this up and run this way. We need to coordinate our efforts like we have done with the U, like we do with Davis Tech, so that we take advantage of what is there. And I'm just,
if I can jump in and just echo the thinking about bringing in another institution, given that every semester we are always trying to figure out how to, even just with the 3 of our programs operating in the women's side in particular, the limited space, thinking of another would represent a real challenge.
for sure, especially bringing in online programs. So I'm just hopeful as this moves forward that we'll be able to have these conversations with UDC and that they'll include us in it.
I want to mention 2 things and then let Eric have a chance to respond to that space limitation. One of them is HB 194, I think now 3 years ago, actually required that corrections require corrections to continue education regardless of lockdown or other restrictions like that. So Eric, you might want to double check that from HB 194 that I sponsored about 3 years ago. And to adhere to that, what does that mean for continuing the educational opportunities? The second thing is I appreciate your perspective in how do we move this forward? And so Eric, will you just comment about what corrections sees moving forward for space and for continuity of education? And because one thing that I think is an opportunity that corrections is moving towards are housing units that are conducive to education. That may be another location of opening up some housing space because of good behavior, because of the culture of being more quiet and attentive and doing education that may, I don't know. Eric, what's your response?
So I really appreciate how ideas get brought up here, because this is honestly the first time that I have been part of a conversation about limited physical space. I mean, I realize there's not a ton of space for everything, but especially in Dell, and that's a really, really interesting point. I will say that if you all can give us a sense of what you may need, we may be able to, at least until we come up with a permanent long-term solution, find some additional opportunities. There's a building right next to Dell. It's Emerald, that is vacant right now, that we may be able to utilize and be able to open some things up. So anyway, I'm going to think about that. I made a big note with a big exclamation point next to it, to have some additional conversations around the space issue. I appreciate that. Two other quick thoughts for you. One is going back to our conversation when we started a little bit earlier in the meeting about the reentry. Reentry has become, historically, it was all about things that we did inside of the prison. We're recognizing now that too often you all will come in, or others providing other types of, supports or treatment. Even mental health treatment is a great example. You don't get everything done while they're incarcerated. And so for us to find ways to also facilitate in other facilities that are outside of the prisons, we have several community correctional centers, 4 of them in Salt Lake, 1 women's, 3 men's, 1 in Utah County, 1 in Ogden. There will probably be a couple more coming online in the next few years. We have AP&P offices, adult probation and parole offices, all over the state that provide different types of classes and what we call the TRCs, the treatment resource centers. But they do have classrooms. They do have the ability to facilitate people coming in. And so I think that bringing up this ability to not only, how did one of you phrased it a second ago and I wrote it down, but just the completion, being able to make sure that we've got it set up so they not only get started, but they actually complete, I think is really, really important. A partial degree, as all of you know very, very well, doesn't get you a whole lot, except maybe a little bit more self-confidence and an ability to stand up and sit up straighter, feel better about your skill set and who you are. One other thing I would offer is just this. So, Representative, kind of a thought in the back of my mind, as we're talking about specializations and asking people to provide certain things, we're just now, for the first time, we've made some manipulations inside of OTRAC. It's our offender tracking system in corrections that allows us to much better understand who is employed, where they got employed, what type of jobs people are getting. And so if you combine the front end effort of going through and doing the assessment on what skills do you have, what education do you already have, connecting that to Doppel, what are your additional opportunities moving forward in the licensed business world inside of the state of Utah, and then connecting those very intentionally to programs that will lead people from where they are with their skill set through a strategy that will get them into a career that they can qualify for, and then making sure that we have programs and classes that directly correlate to those, I think is going to be a really big deal. And we've never been here before. We've never had this capability before. And so I think the efforts of this organization, especially this committee, is going to get super interesting over the next year or so as we can look more at very, very specific data. And I will try and pull together some stuff representative so that next time we meet as a group, that I can bring back to you some of the employment information that we've started to gather about where people have actually been able to find jobs with the criminal histories that they have. And maybe use that as a little bit of a starting point on some additional conversations in the next few months, but
Great.
thank you.
I want to say that's a great segment into what we're doing next, because I have asked Commissioner Adams to actually put together the USHE report that says, here's the coursework, here's the pathway they're leading to, and here's the jobs that they lead to or that they are getting. And how we need to adjust that. If the job availability needs to change, then do we change the pathway and change the classes? But also it should have the report of the space that they're needing or the space they're requesting to be able to fill those needs, so that you have that specific recommendation as well on a real-time basis every time we meet. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to turn the time over to Associate Commissioner Adams to give us our report and recommendations that we are going to be sending to the legislative session.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Ballard. And so what we did, and I'm going to ask Richard to share because I'm incapable with technology today, unfortunately. How embarrassing.
And I apologize for the short time. We have about a half an hour left.
We'll make it happen. So what we did is we combed through past meetings, agendas, things that were discussed. You all know, because we spent a lot of time with you individually, talking to each of you about what's kind of gone on in the committee, what your recommendations might be moving forward. And we distilled them down into this short presentation. We'll take the conversations and the recommendations from today and either add, edit, basically remake the report that was attached as a draft that you all have seen, ensure that everything's there. We'll send it to you for a final review after today's meeting, probably within the next week or two. Then we'll ask for edits back by the end of November so that we can have it in December finalized. So really, to distill this down into two areas, we have budget related recommendations, and then there were working group recommendations as well. You'll recall that through the budget related recommendations that these were actually requested from institutions by Jared specifically. So we looked through reports that you all did, or that we asked you for in our individual meetings to say, did you ever get the chance to have a budget related recommendation? Do you want to make one? Because some of you weren't given that opportunity. And then the working group recommendations were from the initially established working groups for this committee. And there were some, I'll say up front, that didn't end up meeting. But we want to make sure that we share the recommendations of the groups that were actually able to meet. So if we can go to the next one, which I can do because I'm capable. We put in here, we've been editing as we've gone along, because one of the conversations that we just had was, maybe there needs to be this overall, as a budget related recommendation, an understanding of the cost of education inside, and then a sustainable funding model to support institutions and offerings. And we tagged UDC and Senator McKell. I'll say we lightly, Chair Ballard did that,
Yes.
just so you remember.
Wow.
And so that is something that we've added to the recommendations that weren't previously listed. However, the previously listed recommendations, so I don't know how you want to think about these, Chairs Ballard and McKell, as we move forward, but these were the recommendations that have been gathered over the past year from institutions specifically regarding prison education programs. So we have UB Tech, Snow College, U of U, Salt Lake Community College just presented on their mentorship program. So you have the total requests, being just over 1 million, and then one time being about 790,000 ongoing. So I don't know how you want to consider those. I don't know if you want to think about, are you planning to request that this year? Do you want to figure out the sustainable model and have these included in? I guess it's just, what are we thinking as it relates to this?
That's where Eric and I are gonna go back and brainstorm. I love the idea of a independent line item.
Mhm.
And does this reflect is this in addition to anything that exists?
Is it, yeah, this would be in addition to the existing programs.
So I don't know if we need to, if we're gonna create our own line item, if we need to pull in and take out from your existing colleges and put them now into here, I don't know. But what is missing in this picture is what is the cost to the inmate? How effective are the scholarships, the Pell Grants? What is their actual cost? What skin in the game do they have? What opportunities do they have to be mentors, TAs? I think that's the picture that we are missing on this is what that cost is, because we did take out this last legislative year that they do not have to pay 50% up front, which is good. But we also required in HB 194, I think it was 3 years ago, that they have or equal opportunity for scholarships as they would on the outside. So we need that picture of what their cost is and how that affects the budget recommendations, or do we, I just think we need both pictures. And then to decide, are we pulling out your other current funding to actually see what institutions have been getting in their performance funding anyway? I don't know, what do you recommend? I'm gonna turn to some of our institutions to ask. Because this is in addition to.
These are great questions. I don't know that I have all the answers off the top of my head. I can add right now that I had a meeting with Darren Marshall from Salt Lake Community College about our staffing request. What we are asking for is a coordinator over student success and reentry. We really need this position. It takes up a lot of time and effort on my part, on Dr. Bradbury's part, to meet with our students and help them transition into the college systems here. And as they leave, it takes a day, at least a half a day with each individual. And then we did that just last week. So we need some help in that area. And so we would ask for the support for that.
In addition to this?
No, that's our staff.
Do you know what,
Where it says TBD.
So
on
that's
there.
$100,000 a year, per year.
And that's important because that was put in statute last year with HB 248. And
Precisely.
the institutions were great to say, we are willing to do this, but at this point, we really wanted it so we didn't put that burden on the institutions. Because it really benefits those who are incarcerated. That's why I'd rather have a better, accurate financial picture of what we are doing and how effective it is, what the outcomes are for this to really stand on its own instead of fighting with other institution budgets.
And the other thing that will do, I think it's very wise, is that it presents a stronger case to the legislature for the need to provide this additional funding.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Ballard,
Yeah.
Jay Olson, from Sloan College. This would be in addition to the contract that we already have. We're operating 2 programs with even an expanded culinary arts now as a full technical certificate, increasing construction management with just 1 full-time instructor and 2 part-time. And so our ask would be in addition to the contract that we already have to expand that with some full-time positions to cover what needs to be covered, as well as some funding going towards a prison director that can help coordinate everything that's happening in the prison.
What we could do is have the top bullet point be there with consideration of those other ones. So as you have your conversations and not, I don't know if you want to decide today, but then as you have the conversations with UDC, it's kind of discuss how it falls.
I think at this point, this would have to be a separate ask for 2025 because we haven't created a separate financial model, right? So this would be a separate ask. And does this go in individual budgets of other institutions, or is this a USHE ask? Where is this coming from?
Yeah, so this did not get prioritized by the board to go for RFA through our higher education appropriations subcommittee.
So this would be a separate
It would be
RFA.
separate.
And I think that's to the point that we're bringing up is
Yeah.
it's really difficult
and some things on the list are gonna be easier
Yeah.
than others, some are gonna be harder.
So do we want to prioritize this list? Because I think we also have to think through which which appropriations subcommittee is this going to? If it's through UDC also, you know, I
We're
think.
changing
it's-
our committees a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a consideration, and if we want to, this is another
But
question that I had, is
I would-
prioritization.
I would think, this is what I would think, Eric, and you jump in, I wouldn't run it through an appropriation committee, I would run it through a standing committee and then attach a fiscal note to it with a new line item.
Mhm.
And I would chew off, I would look at the list and say, what's gonna have the highest ROI today? And I have an idea of what that is. I'm not gonna say it out loud because I'm not gonna pick winners and losers, but the legislature does that all the time. There are things on here that would be higher than others. And I would think you would wanna drop it in a bill. So I'm gonna open a bill file, Eric, that you and I are gonna work on. And we're gonna come up with it. And I think we run it in a bill with a fiscal note.
Okay.
And have it be a fiscal note bill. That way, because you'd want to run it through higher ed, but higher ed's getting strict and rightfully so, and we're making institutions prioritize their top requests. And you're gonna get buried in that process.
Mhm.
You just will.
So the advantage of having it in a bill is you could create the separate line item in the bill. The disadvantage to the bill is if that bill doesn't pass, then none of this gets funded. I think the bill could get passed easier than and I think that's why I'm turning to Senator McKell to work on the funding part of it, because if the bill can be prioritized and funded, through a different process, whether, we work closer with the governor's office, with UDC, however that's gonna be. I think that what I don't wanna have happen is this just to get off, put off to the side just because of what it is, but I trust Senator McKell.
Wow, this is like a lot of
I
pressure.
really do. I trust him and think that this is truly the most effective way forward. And it's because otherwise we are really putting the wrong strain on our educational systems when it's really for corrections and preventing recidivism and all the above. So I'm gonna just let that be for the two of them to figure out this funding request within legislation. Do you have more things to share?
Yeah, no, I think that that's actually a really great way to move this forward and to set us up for success in the future. Not just for this year, but moving forward. How does it look and work as well?
Fair warning, Eric, I'm opening a bill file right now.
Okay. So let it be written.
On the telephone.
So let it
Okay,
be
great.
done. Yep.
So wonderful. So that gets to the point of, I think that you're going to handle this, but we wanted to make sure that we talked about prioritization. What are we considering? How are we considering them? But it sounds like you're going to navigate that, Senator McKell, with Eric, and we can move forward with however you're doing that. We're happy to support however you see fit.
And I think if we ask for prioritization, everybody would choose their own institution. It's really
Mhm.
hard to say, I don't want mine and we'll give it to somebody else. I
Yeah.
think that's better to have offline.
Mhm.
If any of you have any recommendations of how to give a percentage or fund one more than another, or just ask for all the above
Mhm.
and see what happens. I don't know. I think Senator McKell can give some good advice on that offline.
Wonderful. So we can work that into the considerations for the 2024 recommendations. Currently, we have some things listed out, but I think we can navigate the budget recommendations in there, and we'll run it by both of you before we send it out to Karen. Is that okay?
Great, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So then, moving along to the working group recommendations, these are the ones that we were able to synthesize from different reports. But we had a few groups that met. As I mentioned, there were a few that never had the opportunity to meet. I think that was due to just some miscommunication on who was leading them and why. And I also think you all committed to a lot of work groups. When I was looking at the report of all of the different work groups, I thought, oh my goodness, there's a lot of things on here. And so there, and some that actually ended up working together as well, but there's reintegration work group. And for the reintegration work group, I think Dan, you led that one. I can't remember. But they had suggested that UDC make technology available to complete the FAFSA. For partners to include all institutions serving incarcerated individual on FAFSA applications because of the movement of individuals in the prison and jail system, and the establishing of articulation agreements. agreements between the partners and the prison systems would be really beneficial. As you mentioned, as students want to move and transfer and transition or go into bachelor's programs, it would be nice to have agreements in place so that students could do that easily. Additionally, in articulation, and that funnels into it, the articulation group had suggested that partners also establish articulation agreements. So this is a common thread here, and that partners establish a stackable credential that focus on marketable skills. Again, I think that gets to the workforce thing that you're talking about, is like, how are people actually getting into the workforce? Are there pathways for them to get in the workforce once they finish a technical certificate? Can they stack that into associates? Can they move it to a bachelor's program? What happens there? And then in the student mentors, you had discussed student mentors. I don't know if there were any complete recommendations that you all had really from a point, or just like kind of a reporting out of what you all
Just
were.
more reporting, I really feel that it's more of an effort between the institutions that is approved by UDC.
Okay.
And so far, that approval has come quite readily. They've recognized the need for it and have been very supportive. So I don't know that we have any recommendations other than that we work together and get it done.
Okay, wonderful. The IT group had expressed technology needs, and we've talked about that quite a bit, I feel like, in the past couple of meetings. That there are different technology needs that we have on the inside versus at our institutions. Based on the report that we read, we think that that's been funded, or that you all have had your technology needs met, but we're just not sure because the report really couldn't tell us more about that. If that's not the case, we would love to know about it. And then just today, I want to make sure that we talk about a couple of things. First of all, Chair Ballard recommended a matrix of what's offered where by which institution, how it leads to the workforce, what are some of the limitations and caps and spaces, and what are the student success rates as it relates to retention and completion of those programs, as well as some of the barriers to those. You also spoke, Chair Ballard, about scholarships, FAFSA and Pell updates. And then we talked about this earlier, and we actually moved it up to the budget recommendation of the cost of education and a sustainable funding model. One thing that I'd love you to comment on, Chair Ballard, is you've talked a lot about in each of our future meetings, maybe having a report from the institutions about the barriers and successes that they're experiencing at the time so that we can more quickly navigate those.
And I think it would be great within that, every meeting of having that report of what the barriers and recommendations are moving forward. I think it can also be included in part of the matrix of highlighting or identifying where they are wanting to expand it or adjust it. So we actually have a full picture of where that fits in. And this is a great class, but it needs more space, and here's the space that it is. I think it can be part of the matrix, but also for an overall picture. But I think it can also be a separate report every time, just to, because I want, and if you can give that in advance to Commissioner Adams, then I think we can compile a to-do list, right? And I think that was really effective when we first started this council, to just know what's our to-do list, what are we checking off? Sometimes it's just having another group know that you're doing something. They're like, oh, we can help fix that, or we can be part of that. And sometimes it actually is a financial change or a policy change or something. But unless we know what your barrier is, we can't help to eliminate those barriers and be able to move forward. So I think that every time we should have that list, our to-do list of what we're needing to address.
And I think also related, we talked about today recommendations of location and delivery modality and how that plays into or impacts access, retention, and completion, including the space considerations. I think we can do that as part of the matrix that we talked about earlier. Then something that was brought up today is maybe a separate collaboration opportunity for UDC and education partners, and we're happy to help coordinate or collaborate on that. As I mentioned, Richard has already been reaching out to other institutions who are engaged in this work, maybe to see how we can collaborate better with them moving forward as well. So really, as it looks for reintegration, it seems like there are really 5 top areas that we could address. We could address FAFSA, we could address articulation, we could address collaboration outside of this to bring back to this group. A larger landscape analysis would be the 4th one. And then I don't know what the, I think that actually there's just 4. So FAFSA, articulation, collaboration outside of HEC to bring back to HEC, and then an overall picture and landscape analysis of the program offerings in Utah in the prison and jails.
Would anyone else like to add something that we didn't write down or include in this? from our discussions over this last year that you'd like to have us pursue for 2025? Was that meant to be fiscal 26 or 25?
Yeah.
Probably 25.
25.
Yeah. So, anybody else want to add anything? Well, that's good news. Maybe we took some good notes, right? Do you have anything else that you want to?
No, I think that's it. I just really want to share my appreciation for all of you. You've really helped Richard and I understand extensively what goes on in this space, and we're still learning and growing. So thank you for your patience with us. I think also through this, we've been able to kind of wrap our heads around it a little bit more and come up with some ways where we think we can be more efficient in the process, and again, more collaborative in this process moving forward to really benefit our students at the end of the day, which I think is really exciting.
And I think for legislation that you may do for this funding, I think it would be great to require that for the prioritization process, that USHE and UDC be a big part every year of looking at the whole for them to help make that final
How
recommendation.
do I create a restricted account?
And that's
Taylor,
what staff can
Well,
tell you.
yeah, okay, we'll
Let's-
get you, but yeah.
Figure out a funding mechanism for a good restricted account.
We'll set up a meeting with our ledge reps too and Nate to talk through what it might look
That's why
like.
he doesn't get paid the big bucks.
I don't get paid for anything. It's just a little farm on Spanish Fork.
Yeah. Okay, with that, I wanted to mention there are 4 specific bills that you will see from me this legislative session, 2025, that have a lot to do with everything we've talked about. One of them is if you have a felony record, if you were clean for 10 years, you can run for office, but you can't be a member of a jury. So I'm going to change that so that if somebody is clean for 10 years, they can now be a juror. If they're eligible to run for office, they should be able to be a juror. They should. So that will be in there. Working with Eric Hutchings and UDC to define the duties of the reentry division. That's in its drafting form right now. The next thing is we're actually aligning the debt of inmates with child support and the Office of Debt Collection. Right now they have different timings, different notifications, and so of when they're actually incarcerated or when interest does start or when payments start. So we're just doing that across the board of, I think it's, well, you'll see the details in there, but at least it'll be the same so that the Office of Debt Collection and Recovery Services are both notified by the jails and by corrections that somebody's actually been incarcerated or that they're in jail for longer than, I can't remember if we did 60 or 90 days, just so that that gets put on hold instead of continuing to rack up that debt while those offices are trying to figure out if they're incarcerated or even know that they're incarcerated. So that will be notified to those agencies for that payment to be on hold. And then if you have child support right now, I think you have to pay like $30 a month. There's 2% of the inmate population who actually pays that. So we're going to put that on hold unless somebody really has the financial means to continue to pay child support. Or if they're incarcerated because of child support. And how does that relate to this group? Well, it also will include that the inmate has financial budget recommendations on a weekly basis as they go to choose their commissary. The part of the educational side of it is actually learning, do you want to pay for your restitution? And here's a budget recommendation, because if you pay 25 cents, the state will pay 75 cents while you're incarcerated. They don't know that, but they can get budget recommendations on a weekly basis, learn financial literacy every single week to see what their debts are, what they're paying off, what they want to do with their money. And learning, because many of them get money from the inside or they are earning pennies while for work, how does that relate to their financial statement that they get every week? And so that's a really big deal, at least for me, to help those inmates. If 80% did not graduate from high school when they're incarcerated, how do we even expect them to pay their debts, let alone understand what to do with cash when they get out and start working? The last one is, last year, the legislature created a data locker that IT, kind of our secure vital records is working on. So we're gonna give them till 2027 to actually have vital records specifically for inmates that will include as many vital records as they can. Right now, I actually have a digital Utah driver's license ID. So if I get pulled over, I don't even have to have my wallet with me technically. I can just pull up my Utah ID that I saw when I was in the airport. I scanned the QR code and downloaded that. And so if that's the case, how can we, I know that we identified with UDC, the problem with arrests and inmates is actually what are their vital records? Have we collaborated them? And if we have this data locker, it's going to save a lot of time for law enforcement and for corrections in trying to get that, actually that person and their identifying vital records. And it could include social security, whatever it else is that they want included there. But they're already putting this personal data locker together. We're just going to require that they help the inmates to do that while they're incarcerated. It will help all the above. So just wanted to kind of put that on your radar, that I hope will help our inmates in everything that they're doing and their trajectory forward and their financial literacy on a weekly basis that I hope will help to make a difference, and really appreciate, I think Bank of America is already working on some things with DATC, and we're going to continue working on that and figure out how to do that. So I just wanted to give that update on some legislation coming up, because it's resulted from that of our conversations, right? Yeah.
Let's go.
All right, with that, is there any other comment from the public or from those that are here? Hip hip hooray. We've done a lot and accomplished a lot, and I'm really excited for what 2025 will bring and possible legislation that will really help us in the future to have a streamlined process for what our financial needs are in corrections and our jails moving forward. So thank you to everybody. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Chair McKell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, let's adjourn. Thank you.